everybody, welcome back to Making Stuff with Mrs. Brody. I'm Mrs. Brody. I've missed you all so much. It's been so long since I've made a video. And this is a special video because it's for winter time, because it's winter. And for my school, our mascot is the owl. So we thought we'd make a snowy owl. So those of you that go to my school, you should have picked up a kit, and I'm going to tell you all the things that are in it. If you didn't pick up a kit, I'm going to list all the things that you'll need, and it will be in the description of the video as well, okay? Isn't he adorable? I can't wait to get started. Come on, let's go paint. All right, ladies and gents, so this is all the stuff that you're going to need for your painting, and that probably came in your kit. And again, I'm going to list all the things that you need, so if it didn't come in it, or if you're somebody that didn't get a kit, please don't worry about it. You're gonna have a canvas, and yours is gonna be a little bit smaller than mine. I'm just using a bigger one so you guys can kind of see the details a little bit better. You're gonna get a paintbrush, probably one of these guys. I'm not sure if our crew's gonna give you a pointy one, but if you have one, it'll come in handy, but not the end of the world if you don't have one. A pencil for drawing, and then you'll have your paint. So you have white and blue and black and green. Things that aren't in your kit that you're gonna need at home is something to rinse with, so a cup of water of some kind would be great. And then we're gonna trace some circles, some stencils to create our owl. So you might wanna look around your house for some plates. I found this purple lid that went to some pretzels that someone gave me. I have a paper cup that I'm gonna try out, see if that works. And then I have a fruit cup that had, you know, some peaches or something in it. So you're gonna need a big circle for the owl body, and then you're gonna need some smaller ones for the owl eyeballs, okay? Something else you might wanna have come in handy for mixing paint is some sort of paper plate to throw away. I wouldn't do this on nice plates that you have at home. If you don't have a paper plate, you're gonna always take cling wrap or tin foil and cover a plate that you have. Solves the problem. And then I like to have a Sharpie marker. This comes in handy, and this might be a grown-up thing. So my friends that are a little bit younger, maybe have your grown-up help you with some tracing on your pencil lines, just to help things really stand out and to make it look really awesome towards the end. All right? So again, we need our canvas and our pencil. That's what we're gonna start with, but eventually we're gonna use our paint and our water and our brushes. So the first thing I did was, when you look at my owl, is I made a circle for his body. So this part right here is a circle, and then we're gonna add on some extra details to make it look like an owl. So obviously, this is bigger than my owl was before. It's up to you how big you want your owl. If you want your owl to be really prominent and really big, then find something big that goes almost to the edges, as long as you have some room for wings. And if you want your canvas the other way, you can always turn your canvas this way and make your owl on the horizontal side. Totally fine either way. So we're gonna trace a little bit, and then I'm gonna talk about the background next. Alrighty? So I've already kind of measured, and I know that this purple guy looks pretty good, and I've got room for wings. Now I want him right in the middle, but you could put your owl towards the bottom, towards the top. It's up to you, but I like it in the middle. So I'm gonna trace my circle, and when I trace, I teach my kids, we always use a pencil with a stencil, so if we make a mistake, we can erase it. And I'm gonna hold my stencil nice and firm with my hand, and I'm gonna trace it all the way around with my pencil. And see how I'm kind of going back and forth? That's how I know I have a nice solid line. Now I've gotten to the point where, oh, I don't want to turn myself into a pretzel. So I'm going to hold my stencil, move my hand out of the way, and then finish tracing. Oakley dokes, on to paint mixing. Just quick side note, grown-ups, now might be the time if you have a really little person to take that black Sharpie marker and trace over some lines to help them out. Maybe not necessarily the background lines, but definitely the owl lines. I am gonna save my black lines till the end for mine, okay? So for paint mixing, you do have probably quite a lot of paint, especially if you went out and bought your own, but we don't wanna waste it. We never wanna throw away paint. So on my owl, what I did is I would mix a color for the background, but if I had any left, I might reuse it. So if you look at this color, sort of a dark turquoisey green color, I just added a little bit of white to what was left over, so I didn't make it go to waste. So when we take paint out of our containers, we don't need a ton. I mean, look at the tiny plate that I'm using, and we're gonna try and reuse any paint that we scooped out so we don't waste our paint. So what I do is I like to start with white, because white is a nice mixing color. It helps all the other colors blend really nicely together. So I just take a little scoop like this, kind of smush it onto my plate, And then should I go right in here and get the blue? I should rinse my brush first. So I went and got a paper towel just to blot my paintbrush dry. You might have noticed at the beginning that I was wearing an apron that my handsome husband got me. And I also sometimes wipe my brush on my apron. Totally fine. Don't wipe your brush on your clothes. So now I'm just gonna take a little bit of blue because I want a light blue. So I have a little bit of blue, but I have more white than blue. And when I mix it, tiny little stirs, tiny little stirs. So that way I have a puddle, not a lake of color. So tiny little stirs. Okay, and now I can start painting my background. I'm gonna kind of work from top to bottom. And I like turning my canvas because that makes my heart happy. So you put your canvas whichever way you need to. So if you wanna make a nice crisp line along that curvy line right here, I could just take my brush and go along it like this. But because if you don't have one of those round brushes, you want a nice crispy line, you could hold your paintbrush straight up and down like this, and you could drag it right along that line. And if you drag it right along that line, that kind of gives you that edge that you know you don't go past. Boop, just like that. And now I'm gonna get a little bit of paint. See how I get a little bit at a time? I'm not getting a whole bunch. I'm not scooping it like ice cream. Ugh, ice cream right now. Ooh, makes me feel cold. And I'm going nice and slow. And see how I'm kind of pulling my brush? I never push it because then my bristles get ruined. So I go back and I get a little bit more paint and I'm pulling my paintbrush. If you want your background to be a little bit more solidly colored in, when you got all the way down to the bottom, you could go back and go back over the colors again if you want to. But I kind of like the streakiness. I don't know why, but I like it. So I have some light blue left. So let's see what I can make next. I'm not gonna add any black to these colors because black can be very overpowering. So instead, I'm gonna push him aside. I'm not gonna use him anymore, but I am gonna use the green and I'm gonna keep using the blue and the white. So let's take a little bit of green and let's mix it in here and see what color we get. It is gonna be a turquoisey color, but let's see what kind of turquoisey color we get. Ooh, that's very green. So I chose blue and green because they're sort of wintry colors without being very Christmassy or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or any specific traditional holiday. It's just said winter to me. So this way your painting can be for anybody and for any time while it's wintry outside. So again, I'm gonna take a little bit of paint, and if I want to, I can take my brush and I can make it nice and straight, and I can go along that squiggly line to make sure I don't go outside my lines. Now I do wanna be careful because the blue is still a little bit wet. I used a thin layer, no gloppies. We don't want any glops, especially if we're gonna go back and add another layer in. So now if I start at the bottom of this squiggly line and work my way up, hopefully by then my blue will be pretty dry and I don't have to worry about them smearing. But if they do, it's not the end of the world because I can fix it, or I can roll with it and say, oh, I love that, and then keep going with the smeariness. This is your painting. You make it yours. So if you want them to blend a little bit, if you want it to just look like a snowy sky and you want it to just be all one color, then you don't have to do the squiggly lines. But I like the squiggly lines. I think it adds a little something to our picture. All right, again, no glops. I'm not scooping and I'm not rushing. And keep in mind, guys, I'm way older than you. I've made a bazillion paintings before. So I'm gonna paint faster than you, and that's okay. So while I'm talking, and if you're painting too and you're not as far along as me, please don't worry, you can pause anytime. I am gonna do a couple time-lapse parts because no one wants to sit here and listen to me talk for 20 minutes while I'm painting. Plus that'll help the video go a little bit faster, and then you can work on the painting at your own pace. All right, so I've done row number 2. So I'm gonna rinse my brush out. You can't see it, it's off camera, but I'm rinsing, I promise. See? Rinsing, blotting. And now I do have a little bit of that green left, but I'm gonna hold off for a minute. I'm gonna get a little bit more white, put it over here. And this time I'm gonna get like just a pinprick of blue, just like the barest amount of blue. So when I mix that together, this should be like the lightest blue ever, like even more light than baby blue. Look how light that is. It's practically white. So I'm gonna use this color for the next row. And I'm just gonna show you this, and then the rest of this will be time lapse. I wanted to show you this because this is where our owl is, and we don't wanna go inside our owl, especially depending on which color we end up making this top part. It's gonna be hard to cover up. So for me, this is what I like to do. I like to take my paintbrush, start at the edge of my owl, and I'm gonna drag out away from that line. So grown-ups with small people, you might notice if you have a Sharpie, it's gonna be easy to see that line, okay? So I dragged out and away from my owl. So I'm gonna turn my canvas, remember it's not glued down. Start on that pencil line, drag out and away from my owl. So I'm making sure that I'm not getting inside the lines. And this time I'm just gonna paint along the line like this. Doop, 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 doop. Nice and smooth, no glops. Now for this part, I'm a righty, so I'm gonna turn my canvas a little bit. Be careful because this is wet. You don't wanna drag your hand through the green. That would be no bueno. But again, I'm starting at my owl, so I could start here and drag out like this, but I know that I'm awesome and I can drag along that edge pretty neatly and not go inside the lines. Getting a little bit more paint, dragging along that pencil line, being nice and careful, and up by his ear, okay? And I'm gonna stop here because I don't want it to blend with my green. So I'll finish that in a minute. So we're gonna kind of cut to a time lapse. You guys can finish watching me do the background, and then we'll talk about our owl, which is, you know, the main event. Okay, gang, there we go. My background is done. And I know this part looks white, but I promise you in real life, it's just a very light blue. So some things while you were watching the time lapse. One, part of this got cut off. No idea what happened there. Sorry about that. You might have noticed I went straight in with the blue and just used the blue on the bottom part. You might also notice that I didn't rinse my brush out very well. So if you want to use just a straight up color in the background, go for it. If you want part of it to be white, I would paint it white because once it dries, the paint's going to have kind of a shine where this part stays pretty dull. So if you want a white part, like if you want a white stripe, definitely paint it white, okay? And you can see it's a little streaky, just like this guy, but I like that. But again, if you want it to be more solid, make it a little bit more solid. Between the background and the owl, it's nice to take a break, maybe take a stretch, take a walk, come back, take a look, see how you're feeling, but also get some clean water, important. And then I rinsed my brush in the sink just because it tends to collect a lot of paint, and now I'm fresh for my owl awesomeness, okay? And look on my little plate, I only have 2 tiny puddles. That's it. So if I waste a little bit of paint right there, I'm not worried about it because I used a lot of the other stuff to make all my stripes. So we're going to work, again, we work from the background forward. So on our owl, we're gonna do our owl, oh, he's being naughty. There we go. We're gonna do the owl body first, then we'll work on his eyeballs and wings and things, okay? So I just did a straight up gray for his body, and then I took one of my blue colors that I had left over for the background and added just a little bit of black to it, just a smidgy bit to make it kind of grayish for my owl. And you'll notice his wings are gray too. So on any part of the owl, you guys can go crazy. So if your whole background is, whoop, oh my goodness. If your whole background is blue, you could make your owl green and gray and black and all kinds of colors. It's up to you. But I was strategic in the things that I chose to make black. Like down here, you might have noticed on the time lapse, it was hard to go around the little feet part. So if you make a mistake, the black covers it up. Black covers everything up. And again, here on the beak area, it's gonna cover up any pencil lines from the overlapping eyeball area. Okay, so I'm gonna mix up some gray, and whenever I make gray, I like to start with white first, just so things don't get out of control. So I'm gonna take a nice scoop of white, not too ginormous. I got a pretty good idea of how much paint I need for each part because I have how much I scooped for each of the stripes on the background. So again, I'm gonna rinse my brush, even though I don't always do it. Make sure you rinse your brush, give it a little blot. And now's the time I'm gonna get my black out. So when I say bossy, guys, like start with this much black. Not a lot. In this much white, let's see what color we get. We want it kind of a light gray. We can always add more, but we can't take it out. So I think he looks pretty good, but I want him a little bit darker so it doesn't match the background too much. So instead of rinsing, I'm just gonna wipe my brush off. And again, I'm gonna take kind of from the edge, just a little bit of black. Nice small round stirs. There we go. I think that's a smidgy bit better. All right, so I have a puddle and I'm gonna get some of that paint off. I don't want a ton of paint on my brush. And now I'm gonna move this over here and I'm gonna get some gray and all of this part. So above his eyeballs, around his eyeballs, and above that sort of frowny face shape is where I'm going to add all my gray. So just like on the outside, on the inside, I kind of want to start on that pencil line and drag into my owl. Dragging into my owl. Dragging along that pencil line. I'm not too worried about getting in the eyeballs because that depends on what eyeball color I end up using, but I don't want to go outside the owl because that means I have to go and fix my background. And ain't nobody got time to do that. So just be really careful. Going along our lines. See, I'm turning my brush sometimes, going right there in the corners. So this is that time if you had a small round brush and you wanted to use that to go inside the small areas, you could. But remember how awesome I am. I've painted a lot. I kind of know the tricks of each brush. So I know I can turn this guy on his side and he'll give me kind of a skinnier line. Right along that edge. Whoop. Now I'm gonna outline in black, so I'm not worried that I can still see the pencil line a little bit. Not worried at all. Going nice and slow. And you might have noticed too, when I did the background, I'm sort of trying to follow the shape of things. So I'm not going all over crazy. I'm trying to follow the shape of those curved lines. Just like I did on the background with the sort of curvy lines. Same thing for inside Mr. Owl. Or Mrs. I don't know if it's a Mr. or Mrs. yet. Haven't decided. Because blues and greens can be anybody's color. Same thing with gray. I always tell my students there are no boy or girl colors because Mrs. Brody's favorite color is blue. And she is definitely not a boy. Oh no, the lights in my classroom went out. Everyone pause, think of your favorite color. Okay, I'm back. My favorite color, like I said, is blue. Blue's my favorite. What's your favorite color? Everyone say it. 1, 2, 3. Marvelous. Sorry about that, guys. I'm in my classroom and there's motion sensor lights. And if me or my invisible friend Steve isn't back there, they go out. So I so apologize for that. Nothing to worry about. It's still daytime at least. Thank goodness it's not nighttime or it would have been really scary and dark in here. So again, I'm going around each shape nice and careful. Nose I'm not super concerned about because he's going to be black. So if I get inside him, I'm not stressed about it. Okay. So again, I'm turning my brush on the side, going up in that little area, doing my very best to stay inside the lines. And always pulling my brush, never pushing it into corners. Even when it's moving away from me, I'm still kind of pulling it. See, I moved my hand, so I'm gonna pull the brush. I don't do this with it. I'm pulling my brush at all times. Just keeps them nice and neat and tidy. And sometimes I use people's brushes that aren't mine, so we never want to ruin somebody else's brush. All right, so we're done with the gray. Look at us being awesome. Cruising along. So now I'm gonna pick a color for his belly, and I'm gonna pick a color for his eyeballs. And I'm gonna do those, doing his belly and his eyeballs. I'm gonna do that in time lapse so you guys don't have to listen to me talk some more. But think about what color is in the background. So on this guy, I chose this color because it was different than the color next to it on the background. So on this, should I choose a greenish color? Probably not, because it's gonna match the background too much. For his eyeball, should I do a light blue? Probably not. So I might do a little swap on this. This might end up being a little bluish. This might end up looking a little grayish or maybe greenish. So for this, I used a lot of white and then just a little bit of blue. For this, again, I used some of my leftover blue and white, and I added just a little touch of black to kind of gray it out. And I think I'm gonna do the same thing, but with maybe a lighter or a darker color for this. I haven't decided yet. All right, so time lapse it up. Hopefully it'll stay in screen this time, and I'll meet you back when our bellies and our eyeballs are done. Oh my goodness, guys, guess what I forgot to do? I forgot to hit play when I did the time lapse. Oh, so annoying. And those circles were so satisfying to do. You really missed out. That was my bad, guys. So all I did was take my brush sideways like this, and I went around the eyeball. So I did the outside edge first, and then I kind of did that inside edge, and they might have gotten a little bit fatter, but not a big deal. And I did his belly. I did kind of that light bluish gray, so I added some blue to my gray, and then all I did was add a little bit of green to my light green that was over there. Again, not trying to waste paint. Now you might be saying, Mrs. Brody, why don't we keep going with the eyeballs? Well, this paint is wet, and we're gonna put white next and then black. We don't want those things to be smeary and blend. So we're gonna work on his wings first, then we can go back to his eyeballs and his feet, and we can talk about snowflakes after that. So for his wings, I'm just gonna rinse my brush while I'm talking. For his wings, we wanna make them a slightly darker gray. And again, it's up to you. You could make them bluish gray or greenish gray. All you do is make your gray and then add a color to it. But I think I'm gonna keep it just a grayish color. Not too much paint, because this is a small area. And again, look at how the small plate is really going a long way with the little amount of paint that we're using for this project. So again, I'm being naughty. I didn't rinse my brush. Don't tell anybody. I'm gonna grab a little bit more black than before. Remember, we want it to be darker than that gray. I'm gonna mix it into the white. I can already tell that I think I might want it. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. Let's get all the black in there first, Mrs. Brody. Oh, I think I ended up with a little blue. Ain't no worries. All right, it's darker than the background of the owl, so I'm happy with that. So on this guy, we're just gonna paint the wings just like this. So see how it's gonna stand out? Even if you end up not outlining, which I highly recommend, even if you end up not outlining, we still want it to be different so it stands out from the rest of the owl body. So I'm gonna take my gray, and I'm going to be very careful. So on this one, I'm kind of following the curve of the bump. Curve of the bump. Curve of the bump. And then I can take my brush and kind of smooth it so it's going in one direction. Getting a little bit more to finish up that triangle. And again, this is maybe one of those parts, if you have that nice pointy brush, you could be using for the pointier parts, but I'm just gonna do this. And if you're outlining, edges don't have to be perfect because we'll clean them up when we outline. This time, because I'm not moving my canvas, it just makes sense to start at the triangle, kind of work my way down. Might have noticed I'm a righty, so I tend to always start on the left and work to the right, because if I started over here and then went this way, I might smear my paint. I don't want that to happen. So I'm gonna keep cruising. Finish off that guy. Now's a good time when we move into the white. It might be a good plan to go to that sink and rinse your brush out really well, because we don't want any color left in it when we do the white part of the owl eye. I'm gonna see if I can do a really good rinse in my cup. It is starting to look like, I don't know, minty milk tea or something over here. I think I rinsed him pretty good. All right. So I'm just gonna go right into the white. And I'm gonna grab some white, and I'm gonna go around my eyeballs. I'm not worried about this line because I can always redraw on top of the white. I'm more worried about the green line. So again, I'm gonna be very careful around there. Go nice and slow. And you might be saying, Mrs. Brody, it's already white. Why am I painting it white? Remember that the paint is gonna be shinier than the canvas. So if I left it just dull white, it's not gonna look right. And you might have also noticed, now that I'm going around, that I painted over my nose, my beak. Oh no, no big deal. I can still see the pencil lines. You might not be able to because it's on camera, but but I can still see my pencil lines. And if you've already outlined it in Sharpie, you can definitely see the pencil lines. Paint has a very hard time covering up Sharpie. I've learned that through many years of experience and bad decisions. There we go. So if I still see a pencil line, like over here I still see a little bit of pencil line, I might come back and hit it with white again. But if you don't see any pencil lines, one coat of white is just fine and dandy. So being very careful next to the green. And now's the time I could clean up the edges. White's a pretty good cover up too, not as good as black, but I could add a couple of coats. So if I like went really rogue and things went terribly wrong with the green, or whatever color you chose for your eyeball, not the end of the world, because you can come back through and go over it with the white and clean it up a little bit. All right, I think I did pretty good with that one. Look at that. So now we're gonna do his toes and his beak with the black, and then we'll do his eyeballs, and then we can talk snowflakes, which I know everyone's dying to do because they are pretty awesome. I'm not super worried about rinsing super great because, like I said, black pretty much covers up everything. So now this is a time, if you look at our brush, see how the bristles come together like this? You should have, if you got one of our kits, a brand new brush. If you have kind of a wonky old brush at home, this might not work as well, but I like to take my fingers and kind of pinch them like this, So now I have kind of a nice crispy edge on there. That's gonna help me do my toes. So again, I could use my pointy brush if you have one. Totally fill in your toes, totally great. If you wanna cheat and just use Sharpie marker and color them in, I'm not gonna tell anybody. But if all I got is this brush, we're gonna make it work because we're super awesome like that. So I'm getting just a little bit of black on the corner of my brush, and I know my background is dry, so I can put my hand right here on it, and I can paint my toes. And for this, I'm gonna do kind of small, short brush strokes. We're trying not to get too gloppy, but not the end of the world. Because, you know, owls have talons, claws, so maybe they'll just look more like claws. I'm going nice and slow. See, I'm kind of almost like tiny little dabs of paint rather than big brush strokes. My brush even separated a little bit, look at that. So I have kind of like a mini paintbrush in the big paintbrush. This takes skill, guys. This takes patience and skill. And I might even have to go do a second coat because there's not a lot of black here. That's okay. I'm not stressing about it. It's supposed to be fun. If this really stresses you out, just use the Sharpie. Oops, sorry guys, hit the camera again. Just use your Sharpie marker. It will be a little shinier than everything else, but not the end of the world. My goodness, if my camera could just stop shaking. All right, let's do his other 3 toes. Ooh, I got a little too much black on that one. Uh-oh. All right, this is the time where I'm gonna clean up that wonky edge from the background. Careful of the wing. And if you don't like how streaky your owl is, just like the background, you can always come back and add a second coat. Not a big deal. Trying to get not too much paint again. Okay, so when I'm done with this, we're gonna go to the beak, and by then, because we're not using gloppy coats of paint, we're using nice thin layers of paint, we should be able to do the middle of the eye, and then snowflakes, and then we're done. Hope you guys are having fun so far. Sorry about the eyeball time lapse, so annoying. Can't go back in time and fix it. Just imagine what it looked like in your brain. Okay, toesy woesies are done. All right, so now with the nose. This time I'm gonna get black. See how I got some black and then I kind of blotted? So I have it just at the end. Oh, I got an extra hair in my brush. Not cool. Let's see if I can get him out. Nope, he's stuck there. I'll just have to be careful. So with the triangle, again, I'm starting at the edge and dragging in, or using my brush straight up and down and do that outside edge. And I think because I got that wonky hair that's kind of hanging out, I'm gonna do the edge like this and then come back and fill it in and clean it up. So if you want curvy lines, make them a little more curvy. If you want to just keep it straight and pointy is fine. Boop. And boop. All right. So now we're gonna do his eyeballs. And you might have noticed on my owl that he's got kind of a little bit of white detail. Don't try and do that when it's wet. Don't try and like paint around it. I added white paint on top. We'll do that when we do our snowflakes. I'm gonna get a little bit more black paint, and I'm just gonna be brave and go for it. All the way around. Quick twist of my brush. Practically perfect, just like Mary Poppins. So I kind of start here and I turn my brush and turn my brush. If your brain is like, yeah, that's not gonna happen, Mrs. Brody, you can always take your paintbrush and outline your eyeball instead. But I'm gonna do it the way I know how, and I know that it's gonna be a practically perfect circle. I know it's not nice to brag, but those are some pretty good circles right there, kids. Look at that. Awesome sauce. All right, so our owl is done, except for outlining. But for now, we're gonna move on to the snowflakes. So for me, what I would do is I would cover up all of my paint so it didn't dry out, because look how much extra paint I have. I can save it for other things. I'm gonna need the black later if I don't have a Sharpie. Blue's gonna go away now too. And let's talk snowflakes. Now I'm gonna keep mine white. If you wanted to make yours black, I don't know, maybe you have a goth owl, whatever makes your heart happy, go for it. So on mine, I did white snowflakes, and a lot of these just started with an X or like a cross shape. So if we look at this, I started with a letter T, and then I made an X on it and added some details. This one, I started with a circle that, I'm not gonna lie, I used my pointy brush on this one. That one's gonna be a little hard to make a perfect circle, but I can always fill it in and it's solid. And then I made a line up and down, left and right, and then made an X. So you can see a lot of my snowflakes start with the letter T or the letter X. And then these little swirls, all I did, again, you can take your paintbrush and swirl it around, or you can take your little paintbrush and swirl it around. So if I took my big paintbrush, it would be a swirl like this. If I took my little paintbrush, it would just be a little swirl. And then for the dots, oh, such an easy way to do it. I just take my handle of my paintbrush and do that. Just make dots. But I save the dots for the end because I fill in where I don't have snowflakes, okay? This time, I promise, I will hit the time lapse. But let's do one together so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So I get some white paint, but not a lot. See how I have just a little bit at the end? And again, my background is dry, so I put my hand right on the background and I make a line down. And then I'm gonna make a letter T, sort of shape. So make a line across, get a little bit more paint. Now I'm gonna make an X, and maybe my X will be a little bit shorter. Now I have an X, and this is where I can start adding details. So on this one, I could make some lines like this on the up and down and the side to side ones. I could take the back end of my brush and add some dots. Boop, 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 boop. Maybe 2 dots on those guys. These don't have to be perfect snowflakes. You can even look up on YouTube. You can pause my video and wander off and find a video that tells you how to make even more intricate and awesome snowflakes. I am not gonna say that I'm an expert on snowflakes. I've made a lot. I have a lot of different designs. So I'm gonna time lapse a few more of them. I will hit the button, I promise. And then we'll come back and talk about outlining our owl. All right, gang, so those are all my snowflakes, a little bit different than this one. So again, remember I had a bigger canvas, so I could make some bigger snowflakes so you guys could see the details. But here are some examples of the ones that I made over here. So with that tiny brush or with the end of my brush, I could make some smaller lines. I stuck with my big brush to kind of show you how to make them like that. I used the end to make dots on the snowflakes. Some of the snowflakes aren't attached to the lines. Some of them are all attached. It's all up to you. So now we can do some outlining. It's up to you. You can use your black paint. So I'm gonna cover my white because I'm done with it. And I'm gonna get my black paint out again. So again, this is the point. Wait for everything. I can't stress this enough. Wait for your whole owl to dry. So you see a couple spots that are still wet. I'm gonna avoid those spots, especially if I'm using a Sharpie. Once you drag Sharpie through paint, you ain't going back, okay? You've ruined a Sharpie. Now, if I was gonna take the Sharpie, I would probably start with the outside and make sure that was done and work my way in because those things were still a little bit wet. Same thing with my paintbrush, and I'm gonna hold it nice and straight and flat. So I'm gonna do the outside edge with my paintbrush, and then I'll show you how to use the Sharpie on the inside. So again, I'm sort of taking my brush, getting black just at the bottom, and giving it a tap. So hopefully, that darn extra hair is gonna mess me up. So I'm hopefully gonna have a nice kind of pointy together brush. So I'm gonna hold it nice and straight, take a deep breath, and just go for it. And see how already it cleans up that edge? Anything that got out of place, bam, fixed. And we are gonna outline the wings, so again, don't worry about if you don't go perfectly right up close to it, because we're gonna go over those. And I'm gonna be careful on the edge, because really, I should wait for my snowflakes to dry too. But we're just gonna go for it. Boop. And see, I'm kind of trying to stop and start at natural places. I'm not starting and stopping in the middle of a line. This one starts at the wing, and I stopped at the point. So I'm gonna start at the point and go from point to point. And see how far that black paint took me? I have just a little bit on my brush. Took me a long way. Again, starting at that point. Working my way around the eyeball. Stopping at the wing. Boop. Okay? And that's how you'd outline with a paintbrush. So I could do the same thing with the eyeballs all the way around. But if you don't want to do paint, or if you are like Mrs. Brody and a little bit lazy and you know the Sharpie's going to be a little bit easier, you can use that. I'm not going to Sharpie the wings over here because that paint is still definitely wet, but I'll show you on the belly. So the canvas might eat up your Sharpie a little bit, and this one's been used a few times, so he's not super pointy. I don't like to waste Sharpies, and I know that I want kind of a fat line to match my painty line, so I don't mind that this isn't super, super pointy. But if you're gonna do the whole thing in Sharpie and you want a brand new one, go for it. Just know that you probably won't be using it for very much after you outline your owl. So nice and slow. Remember, we pull our lines just like we pull our paintbrush. That's how we end up with nice straight lines. And I tell my kids at school, Mrs. Brody is the queen of the straight line. So with the eyeballs, I'm just being careful, guys, because I know all my white parts are still wet on the outside. So I know that this part's dry, so I'm gonna set my hand right here on his eyeball. And I'm gonna be very careful where my wet paint is. And I'm just gonna go right on that green line. Stop, and I can always turn my canvas. Wherever your hand is comfy, guys. Your canvas isn't glued down, you move it wherever you need to. Now, if I felt like my nose didn't look great, I could use my Sharpie and outline that, but I think I did a pretty good job with my nose. Now, my eyeballs overlap, so I have a choice. I could make a line here in between them, or I could leave it alone. I'm gonna finish outlining the outside and then decide. So I'm being very careful, especially when I get close to that wet paint that I shouldn't be going near. Whoop. All right, now let's do the top one. Sound effects always help. So you might have noticed I made a mistake there. So I just went over and made that line a little thicker. Nobody needs to know I made a mistake. Maybe I did that on purpose. They don't know, except for you guys, and you're never gonna tell. All right, so on this one, I'm gonna be a little more careful because I know that there's some pencil line I can still see. See how I can still see that pencil line? So that's what I wanna put my Sharpie on, is I wanna put it right on that pencil line and try and cover it up best I can. And then I can always go back in and make my line a little bit fatter to cover up the gray. All right, I think I kinda like it without the line. I'm gonna leave it without the line. It's up to you if your eyeballs end up touching, whether or not you outline where they touch or not. And then we're gonna go inside, all the way around, being very careful. I keep hitting that with my glasses. Sorry guys, my glasses are bigger than I think they are. Probably the last video you guys saw me and I had those little black glasses. And I got these big old clear ones. Oh, I should have worn my fun new glasses. One side is a square and one side is a circle. How banana cakes is that? Maybe I'll wear it for the next video. Maybe a springtime one. Boop. Okay. And then I would outline his wings. Again, being careful because I painted there, Mrs. Brody. Boop. 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 I think the Sharpie just goes a little bit faster. You can tell it is different than the paint. You can see that difference between the outline of the owl body and then all his parts. So again, it's up to you. If you're a grown-up and you're one of those grown-ups that tend to, and I say this with all the love in my heart, tend to want to fix people's mistakes on their paintings, this is an okay thing for you to do because it helps clean up edges, but your kids still did the painting, okay? So again, I could outline the nose if I wanted to. I could outline the black part of the eyeballs, but I think it looks pretty okay. I think I am gonna outline the feet though, because things went a little bit sideways with that big old brush. There we go. I think that just helps them stand out a little bit better. All right, the last thing we're gonna do, give a little highlight in the eyeball, and you guys are good to go. Ooh, let's rinse my brush a little bit better than that though. We don't want gray in the eyeball. So with my white, I made a cute little teardrop shape on the original, okay? So all I did for that was just a little swoop, and I was good to go. But you could do a dot if you wanted to, just a little dot like this for a highlight. And you kind of want to do it on the same side because otherwise, if you do a dot here and a dot here, your owl's gonna look cross-eyed. And if you do a dot here and a dot here, it's gonna look like his eyeballs are going in different directions, which, I don't know, maybe owls can. I know they can turn their heads all the way around, so who knows, guys? So I'm gonna do a little swoop, whoop, and a little swoop. And then we're good to go. Once you are at this point, you're done-ski, guys. You're gonna add a signature to your painting. I always do an A and a B for my mystery first name that you don't need to know, although some of you do, don't tell. And then I do B for Brody. And you guys are done. I think he's just as cute as the other one. He's different. We put them side by side-ish. They're different, but the same. One's awfully bigger. So this must be the mommy owl. This is the baby owl, or the daddy owl, or the grandpa owl. Who knows? So we got a big owl, we got a little owl. I hope you guys had fun, for sure. Let's meet up for a little face-to-face before we say goodbye. All right, ladies and gents, I hope you had fun painting our awesome and adorable wintry owl with me today. Again, sorry about that whole time lapse with the eyeballs. Ugh, technology, I tell you. Plus, it's the end of the day, so Mrs. Brody's a little bit tired at this point. I hope that you guys have a fantastic holiday season, whatever holiday you celebrate. I hope you have fun with your family, but make sure that you're staying safe, that you're being kind, and you're being creative. And I'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody.